Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good people out there in the world. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good people out there in the world. Last time y'all saw me, I was breaking down the three branches of government here in America, these United States of America: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And it was an educational point where we had to make sure we talked to our live audience to make sure we were all on point as far as understanding and knowing how the government structure works. Last week we had a rebroadcast because I was at homecoming, celebrating my homecoming, my alma mater, Shaw University. We won our homecoming. We beat Johnson C. Smith, a good rival of mine in the fraternity world. But it's good to make sure that we stayed on top and we won our game as far as homecoming is concerned. But today, I just wanted to have a candid conversation. Wanted to make sure I didn't miss any episodes. My boss man, ATR, I didn't want them mad at me, fussing at me because I took shows off or took days off. I'm really trying to gear myself up for the 2022 season. That's when I really want to make sure we're hitting the pavement, hitting it hard, running as far as what's going on in this world, and just getting an understanding of what we need to do and what we need to change as far as what world is concerned. I really wanted to have a candid conversation. If you didn't know, in the state of Georgia, next week Tuesday, it's a lot of places out in the world, but I can only speak on the state of Georgia. State of Georgia, next week Tuesday, we'll be having what you call municipal elections across the whole state of Georgia. So a lot of municipalities that pretty much govern the local politics of our world will be up on the stage, up on the platform. And if you're not aware, in the state of Georgia, you had what you call Senate Bill 202, which is no bill no more. Now it's actually the law that was passed earlier this year on behalf of the Republicans to make the rules, to make voting a little bit more stringent, as they would like to say, make it not necessarily harder, but where we can control the narrative. And the sad part about what I have to report today is making it harder for those people who actually put the rules in play, because guess what happened? Those are the main people that I'm hearing that are the ones who complaining when they go to the voting polls, where we made it very easy for us to be able to turn in an absentee ballot where I can go around to my whole family and collect that ballot and turn it into the bin that was outside of the voter registration building. All the things that made everything election process easy was deemed to be, I guess, against good terms as far as what's going on. So it's becoming apparent that what was designed to hurt, I guess I'm gonna say it straight up, African Americans actually is hurting the population that actually put these rules in order. So shouts out to everybody who's already submitted their absentee ballots. Shouts out to everybody who's gone to early voting. Those two things are very important. Our structure, I think Atlanta, Georgia, the major metropolitan city here in the state of Georgia, is on the ballot this year. We'll know who the mayor of the leading city for the state of Georgia is on the ballot. City of Savannah, where I'm from, doesn't have anything on the ballot. Pooler, where I live, doesn't have anything on the ballot, but four of the municipalities in my area: Tybee Island, Thunderbolt, Garden City, Port Wentworth, and Bloomingdale, maybe I should say five, all have candidates on the ballot looking to represent them, change the directions, keep everything the same way, however you want to look at it, however you want to call it out. That's what's getting ready to happen. Shots out, Betty Jones. How you doing there? And then on top of that, we have what you call the E-Splosh. E-Splosh is educational spot, special purpose local option sales tax. So you have the E-Splosh that's on the ballot as well. You've seen a lot of signs in the community that says vote yes, but then they're not giving me the full Monty of why I should vote yes. And if you didn't know anything about Splosh, technically speaking, cannot have any governmental dollar supporting it for it to do yes or no as far as the referendum is concerned. However, what's happening in our community is nonprofit organizations are taking the mantle to kind of push the effort as far, or PACs as they say in the political world, are taking the mantle to actually push the efforts as far as making sure that E-Splosh does pass. I've seen nothing but yes, 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 yes. I haven't had the time to take the deep dive to figure out why everybody is so happy or so gung-ho about pushing the yes button. Usually is always some underlying underlining narrative behind it. Whether it's being somebody is asking us to vote yes because it's splash money involved, and splash money involves contract work as far as building brand new schools and doing all that stuff, or even paying down debt that was accrued that didn't help or support anything that was probably close to my narrative. So I really don't understand. I voted yes on the strength of everybody else told me to vote yes. I graduated from Beach High School, but I attended Windsor Forest, and I know Windsor Forest is one of the big things that's on the East Bosch locally. So I figured I'd go ahead and support it. So I did vote yes in that regards, but I encourage everybody to go out there and do a deep dive to figure out why they should vote yes or no on it, because I think it's your choice as far as whether you should be voting yes or no on it. And so, like I stated before, not last week, the week before last, I broke down the three bodies of government, which is the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. Last week we didn't have a show. Last week I was out of town on homecoming. So you know how we go. We go to homecoming. We kind of forget that we have all these duties and mandates we need to be following through on. So I kind of let that thing slide. And so I'm coming back to you live in full color on this day, the last Friday in the month of October. October has ran by. Matter of fact, 2021 has pretty much ran by super, 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 super fast. And so basically, with 21 running super, super fast, it's bringing right around the corner 2022. And 2022 in the state of Georgia brings the gubernatorial year, which your governor, your lieutenant governor, attorney general, your secretary of state, insurance commissioner, not tax commissioner, I always say that, agriculture commissioner, and your public service commissioner seats. All those seats will be on the ballot coming next year, 2022. So the state of Georgia, we all talked about how Georgia turned blue, but next year will be really the test to see if the Georgia really turned blue. And so shouts out to my man John Lewis. My sister, she's employee over at John Lewis Elementary School up in Atlanta, Georgia, metro Atlanta area. She gave me the sweater. Shouts out to John Lewis. Hopefully we can get the John Lewis bill passed so we can get some of this other stuff going. But it's not looking all that good in the Senate as far as what's going on. And a lot of that has to do with what I really want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is how politics plays on the local level and how it disseminates and makes its way up into the hierarchy structure as far as state government is concerned, and then, or even let's go even deeper, from municipal to county, where they battle it out as far as a certain territory is concerned, where municipal government was created as a quasi-government from the state, so they can have so the state can have power and control locally without having to deal with the counties. And of course, you have county, which is the lowest tier of federal government, which actually is a tier of federal government that services that territory when this country was designed. And so you have local government, which can be considered municipal government, and then you have county government, which those are the two structures that deal with the local base. That's the local brand for what we really deal with. And then the next level up would be state level government. And state level government is when you talk about your governor, you talk about your lieutenant governor, like I said before, all those seats will be up for election in 2022. And so it's very, 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 very important for us to start looking at the lay of the land and how these people who want to serve us for the next 4 years actually can make that happen. And so when we talk about that, we talk about the governor. The governors are tied to the executive branch, and the executive branch is what controls the narrative. And so when you see localized issues like roadway infrastructure and stuff like that, that's deemed to the local narrative. But when you're talking about defects, and when you talk about interstates, and when you talk about those statewide mandates, those statewide federal rules and regulations, you're talking about the governors who goes and signs all the bills into play that the state legislature, which is state reps and your state senators, actually combine and make the rules in legislature. And so we're looking at a battleground for Georgia next year. And so it's very, very important that we in our community start having these conversations, candid conversations, where we're talking to our local leaders to make sure we press upon them that they're talking with those people who want to represent us on the state level, so we can make sure we have good intergovernment. And that's very, very, very important that we don't talk about how we have good intergovernment principles. That means our mayors, our county commissioners, our chairmen of county commission, our aldermen, all the women who sit on that, our city commissioners, all those elected officials who are local have a great relationship with the governor of the state of Georgia. And so It's very, very important that we go out there and we make sure we take it upon ourselves, if we have elections in Georgia, to make sure we're voting the right people into the municipalities and into the county government structures that we actually have. There are a few state rep seats that are out there too. I know for a fact one in my backyard, 165, is up for election. There's 5 people on the ballot running for that particular designation. And once again, that can be a shift as far as our community is concerned, to kind of give good reference to that. When you're talking about money appropriated to state-supported schools like Savannah State, Georgia Southern, formerly Armstrong, which is Georgia Southern Savannah campus, all those schools get designation, get federal funding from the state. And the state legislature actually kind of determines how much money goes to these universities. And these universities determine what kind of programs come into our community. And so when you say you don't have master's programs or PhD programs in your community, a community as big as Savannah should have more PhD programs and more master's programs. A lot of that has to do with what kind of revenue we're pouring into the state, our state-supported schools. And so when we're asking those people to represent us, and I know this year is not the big year as far as state reps and state senators concerned, but 2022 will be a big year for that. And that means all 100, I think it's 180 state reps, and I think it's like 50, 60, between 52, I think it's 52, I'm not sure, I have to look back at the paper, 52 state senators. All those individuals will be on the ballot, but guess what? This year right here, they will determine how the lines will be drawn for all those people in those 2 bodies of government that represent us on the state level. And all of them will be on the ballot next year. And that's a funny thing, that with the census tract, we had a funny situation happen with the census tract. And what happened in Chatham, in the state of Georgia, was because federal government slowed down the process as far as census tract is concerned, we didn't get to the full percentage of what we could have gotten as far as counting up those people in our country, and especially the state. And I'm just going to reference the state of Georgia because I'm from Georgia. So what that did was we may have been 5 to 10% off on count, which means we have to deal with that count. And because of that, yes, you're right, redistricting is so important for the next 6 months, 6 years. And because of that, what we have to do now is, because we did not get a full accurate account, what's getting ready to happen is we saw a shift where the numbers increased to our northern brothers and sisters, and it did not increase as much in the area that we call the 1st Congressional District. And because of that, guess what's going to happen? We're in possibility. It's a possibility we'll lose 1 or 2 state representatives. And if we lose 1 or 2 state representatives, now that's not going to hurt us as Democrats. That's going to hurt those people who are Republicans, because what's going to happen is they're going to tie those communities in even tighter than what they were. Now, us in Chatham County, it won't be effective because Chatham County is a Democratic county, so we won't see none of those problems. But those south of Glenn County, because those populations didn't actually increase to the numbers it should have increased according to how the increase went across the whole United States of America, then what's going to happen is we're going to lose 1 or 2 representatives. And then what's going to happen in urban areas, in the Metro Atlanta, outskirts of Metro Atlanta area, that's where the real growth happened. And they're going to get 1 or 2 state reps and state senators. And so because of that, the shift is getting ready to be the power broker that we've always known as far as Atlanta Metro is concerned, has got even greater, because they're going to have more representation up there, which is going to give more power stroke to as far as have a Democratic presence. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get more Democratic friendly state reps, state senators. What that means is what they will traditionally do, because currently speaking, the Gold Dome is controlled by the Republican Party. So what they'll do is they'll create stronghold Democratic areas, like 80, 90% Democratic areas, so they can get functioning 60-40, 55-45, where they know they can control the narrative for at least 4 to 6 years. And as Chuck alluded to, this can be a problem from 6 months to 10 years based on how this redistricting map goes. And so if you did not know, in the state of Georgia, that redistricting is going to go down next week, Tuesday. They've been hesitant about sharing these maps with us, and I can understand why they're hesitant, because it's going to change the scope of what everything looks like. Now, me personally, I'm sorry, I'm selfish. Only area I really truly care about is the first congressional district because I live in the first congressional district, and how these maps are drawn affects how my congressional district representative, not my buddy, actually gets back into office for the next 5 terms, because it's 5 terms that sit within the next 10 years. So 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. Those 5 terms will be directly affected on how those lines are drawn, along with all those 6 people who represent us, who represent me in Chatham County, as far as state delegates or state representatives are concerned, and the 2 state Congress people who represent me in Chatham County. Those 8 people will affect me ultimately as well too. So I'm constantly looking at those lines because I want to have my selfish moment first to make sure my community is straight. And I think everybody across the board should be doing the same thing for their community, because if we're all ultimately doing the same thing, then we're collectively, we can make sure we can be a bargaining chip to make sure this thing happens. Now, I've been talking to people all day long. Now, we all know, all of us in America know, that the census comes every 10 years. It always comes in the year where you have that 0 at the very end. So 2020, and the next one will be in 2030. Now, I'm in the principle of understanding when we talk about strategy, and I've been talking about strategy in the Black community. I'm talking about strategy in the poor community. I've been talking about strategy in the Democratic community. I'm talking strategy because the reason why I break down strategy is the only way we can overcome any objective that comes toward us. And so with that being stated, I want to give at least 1 or 2 points of strategy. Now, the key thing about strategy is I should never divulge my strategy to the world, because once I give it away, then guess what? Somebody, if you know how to play chess well, if I give you my move, then you understand my next 2 moves. And so you can strategize against my strategy, and my strategy becomes ineffective. That's why I don't typically put my strategy out there for any reason. But this piece of strategy meat, I'm going to put out there because it's an easy strategic move that can actually be followed by any group of people who is currently not being represented by the representation that's being put forward. Now, with me, as far as when it comes to census tract numbers concerned, how I look at it, the numbers, the maps, anything that we're getting ready to be presented, either be next week, Wednesday, or next Friday, or whatever day, when we're finally given these maps that represent what our territory is going to look like, who's going to give me who my people are going to be for the next 10 years. My thing is not to sit there and complain about it. My thing is to start strategizing the minute it is presented to me. And so my first strategic point is going to be this. I'm going to look at that map and I'm going to say, how can I win with my narrative? Okay, that's stated. How does a Black agenda win on this narrative? Next statement. How does a poor population or impoverished group of people win on this narrative? I'm not finished, y'all. How does the Democratic Party win on this narrative? See, my thing is the only way we're going to be able to win is we got to stop waiting until it's time to start putting pen to paper. And we should be constantly, the first time, the minute we get the new maps, that is the point where we start doing strategy. But if we're not willing to step to the table, take the map presented to us, swallow our saliva. Now, I'm telling you, there are people out there, I want them to do just what they're doing. I co-sign on people going out there, finding out the niches, finding out the problems, creating a lawsuit. I appreciate the NAACP of the world. I appreciate the Democratic Party of the world. I appreciate all those lawyers, doctors, friends, and everybody else in the world who are going to go out there and going to sue the pants off of this bullcrap map that's going to be presented to me. I want that understood and clear. I support all those brothers and sisters' efforts, because guess what? They're needed to the table. But Jay Jones, as far as I'm concerned, as far as Hype Jones is concerned, what James is getting ready to do is James is going to take the map that's presented to me, and James is going to start strategizing on that map that's presented to me. James is going to go into his systems to figure out where the population trends have grown, where the population trends have gained, where they've lost at. And I'm going to see if it's really significant loss. I'm going to see if it's lost because people are afraid to participate in the census, people are afraid to vote, or I'm going to look at the loss and see if people really did not participate. If people just did not participate and they're not participating in the voting process, then it's upon my job, point 1 of strategy, is to go out there and make sure I attack those communities I want to fix and make sure they're not disenfranchised, they're not left out or anything else like that. I think a good friend of mine, a judge friend of mine who recently retired, He said, I got to stop saying the word disenfranchised, because you know what? When you say disenfranchised, that means at one point in time you was a part of the franchise, and then guess what? You were taken off the franchise. In this case, a lot of these people who I speak of were never a part of the franchise. And so what we got to do is we got to find a way to make sure they become a part of the franchise. And so with that being stated and with that being said, first rule of law is what I want to do is I'm going to take the map, print them out, and I'm going to look to see what I need to do to win. Is it going to take me 2 years? Is it going to take me 4 years? Is it going to take me 6 years? Is it going to take me 8 years? Or is it going to take me the entire 10 years to get a win in this map? That's first point of strategy. But I'm not going to wait until 2030 to start coming up with that plan. I'm going to do that plan in 2021 when the map is drawn and the map is given to me. Because that's what true statisticians, that's what true strategic people do. They don't wait till the last minute to create the strategy. They create the strategy at the moment they need to make the strategy, and they work the strategy throughout the duration of the time when they need to work the strategy. And that's how we're going to win. No matter what they give us, and I can tell you this, someone said this at one of the redistricting meetings, that they can gerrymander, they can mess up the lines, they can do all that they want with the lines. The problem is society always fixes itself regardless. And with that being stated, with that being said, usually in the 6-year time period, by 6 years, the lines fix themselves. The problem what we have then is we have people who are not willing to run for public office. And that's always been our downfall. And you know what? I'm glad we got some people tuning in and everything like this, because I'm going to say what I say candidly and open and forward. The old strategy for African American community we would get together in a room, get around somebody, and we would put that person as the chosen person to represent us in that area. And that worked for us in a time period, because what it did was it forced a union amongst those people who were the strategic people in the community. Unfortunately, in 2021, that strategy don't work for the black community no more. We can no longer go behind somebody who's been sitting in the seat 14, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. We can no longer go and depend on those kind of people. What we have to do is we have to raise a new generation of leaders who are not tied to an agenda, but tied to making sure that their community is the number one thing at their task when they go into office. And so what that means is it's time out for all those people who've been hanging around for decades, been hanging around for 20 years and sitting in office, and the tail end of what they got going on, they're doing absolutely, positively nothing for us in the community. We're not getting any gains. Our streets aren't getting paved. We're not getting any gains. We're not getting any money in the splash. We're not getting any gains. They're tearing apart our community. We're not making sure that when it comes to housing situations, we're not getting it. When it comes to fair access to dollars, when it comes to splash, or when it comes to any kind of other taxation that goes in our community, when it comes to opportunity zones being dropped in our community, and then we're not getting the opportunity to pay into the opportunity of the zone. I mean, it's crazy. We can't get mad at anybody if we're not willing to challenge and make sure that those people who are in those local elected positions are being held accountable for doing right by us. It's shame on us if we're not holding them accountable. But guess what? A lot of times what we do is we're so caught up in the romance of them being African American that guess what? We don't give that person who really might do right by us a chance. And then a lot of times, guess what? We fall out of temptation. We're good at attacking, and tearing down somebody's culture, tearing down somebody's platform. But then when it comes time for us to stand up and run against that person, we've exuded so much energy attacking and destroying that person that we've now put ourselves in position where we now can be attacked. And if we want to fix the narrative, we have to be strategic. What I encourage you to do is, and this is what I'm telling you, there is somebody out there who is ready to run for every position that has failed us and failed our community. There is somebody out there ready to run for all these things. Rather than look at the historic relationship that you have with those current people in office. Rather look at the historic relationship you have with those people you know that's desiring to run for office, but you know they're bad juju for us. Why don't we take the opportunity to take the time to go out there and train or work with somebody who's fresh, who's green, who has an understanding and a love for people, versus us playing this game of, well, they don't have the resume to fit what we want to sit in that seat. I think it's time out for the resume people, because you know what? The resume people are the one who got us in these crooks, nooks and crooks we in now. These resume people are the people who have the resume, because they were ones who were putting on those corrupt boards. They were the ones who were put in these corrupt positions by these corrupt people. And then guess what? Now you're going to give them corrupt opportunities to be able to do the same thing that the people who put them in that resume that they got. Maybe it's time out for that. Maybe it's time for us to go out there and identify 4 or 5 candidates out there who don't have a history with all the current history we got going on in the government structure. Maybe it's time for us to go out there and explore to find those other people who fit the criteria of loving their community, being in their community, and being there for their community. Because what I have seen over the last 20 years in my community is a lot of people have been put in a position. And when they got in that position, they were true to the heart still for their people. But over time, guess what? They lost touch with the people. And I think Chuck and John McMasters, I know everybody is probably going to get mad at me for calling them out. But one thing I can say about those two is what they have been pushing, which is something I strongly believe, and I'm not putting this out there for political reasons, but I put it out there for real reasons. If you go back even to George Washington, I think George Washington even said the same comment, and I'm paraphrasing what they said. The government, people understood that you only needed to have 2 terms to do what you needed to do. And after that 2 terms, then guess what you need to do? You need to give it to another generation to be able to take over. Now, we do that when it comes to the mayor, and we do that when it comes to the chair of the county in my hometown. But we don't do that for the seats on the floor. And I think because of that, it's been detrimental to our community, to our community, because we get people who become tyrants in those spaces, and they're not there for the people anymore. They're for the politics. And that's how we lose our politicians. I think a lot of people have great intentions when they initially come into the platform of running for public office, but then guess what? When they get in public office, they fall in love with the fun, because they ain't fall in love with the money. Because let me tell you first, there ain't no money in politics unless you're trying to be corrupt. But I'm gonna leave that whole for a whole nother point. But when you fall in love with all that other stuff, then guess what? You lose contents to the people. And so I think that one of the best things we could ever do, whether we have, and watch this, and see, they didn't say this, but I'll say this. Whether a position has term limits or not, the people can decide whether those people have term limits or not. Because what we can do is, after they've done their term of success, and I understand the nuances, because that was the one thing I fought about when it comes down to term limits. I said 3 terms because the only reason why I say 3 terms is because they become fully vested in the city or the county, you have to do 10 years. Now, I can tell you right now, the county commission or the city of Savannah can go into those terms of agreements and change it where if you're an elected official and you've served 2 terms, you can be fully vested too. Now that's upon those elected bodies to change the narrative so they can fit that criteria. Because it's unfair for the mayor, because if a mayor runs 2 terms and that doesn't come from a seat from the bottom, then guess what? They're not fully vested either. So I think that somewhere down the line, this is something, and you know I talk about it all the time, this is something dealing with policy. And I think with policy, with elected leaders, we need to create policy that states that, guess what? Anybody who is elected in 2 terms, you can become fully vested after you have served both of those terms. And I think that's a great idea if need be. Now, what Chuck just said, I can agree with that too. We can just do it 3 terms and be good. But me personally, I think that we need to be aligned to what they said as far as the 8 years is concerned, and keep it at that. Because what I don't want to have is people start serving 2 terms and a half, and then at the halfway mark, they resign, and then now you have that politics of somebody resigns, becomes in, and you put somebody in to be the new incumbent, And that's what we have with those judgeships. And I don't like that situation where the judgeships pass it on from one generation of Joneses to the next generation of Joneses to the next generation of Joneses. And the American people don't see it because they use the same sign colors, they use the same last name. And so the American people just thinking they're voting for the same people over and over and over and over again. So those are the kind of terms that I look at. But, like I stated before, I'm a term limit type guy. I think that if you cannot get anything done in those 2 terms that you were on office, then step away for 4 years and then come back if you need be to go ahead and fulfill those things and allow 4 years to allow the process to go on. One thing I learned about the county is this. Everything that I put out there, those last 4 years that I was in office, they don't come to fruition until the very next term. Because right now, I was the 6th District County Commissioner. Aaron is going to be able to benefit. Aaron A. Whiteley, who replaced me, is going to be able to benefit from everything I put out there as far as policy, everything I put out there as far as an agenda is concerned, because he's in the seat now, and it takes about 3 to 4 years for some things to come into fruition. So my thing is, if you understand politics, it ain't that Aaron put some stuff together. It's what stuff that James put together, and then next, when he's in office, he's going to reap the benefits of it. Because it takes about 3 or 4 years for those things to come into fruition. So those are the things that we really got to start making sure we have, except for infrastructure. Infrastructure is a little different because it's based on if you have the revenue available to make sure that infrastructure happens. Like for Memorial Stadium. Memorial Stadium was an easy one because Memorial Stadium, the infrastructure was there, and we made the terms as far as making sure that revenue was spent well to build a Memorial Stadium. And Jennifer Ross multiplex. Not the soccer field, multiplex. That's another project that was put out there that was a need for the community. We saw a need where the football players, and I said it, the football players needed a place to play. And so we said, yes, that's a good project. Let's move forward on it. And that infrastructure design was done during my administration. It was put into play during my administration. And now they're still using those fields. So it's important to understand what your people need, what your people want before we get too far off the subject. It's important to understand these kind of things. And so that is in line to making sure we have the right leadership in play. And so recently I heard conversations in my own community, the $15 an hour to the lower wage employees and staff. And and my thing is, I have a yes and a no pause clause to that right there, because I do believe that certain fields should already be at $15 an hour. I don't want to hear that conversation in reference to, well, if we put it at $15 an hour, then the cost of this is going to go up and the cost of that's going up. Because I just saw that it's a restaurant actually getting ready to take it to where their employees get an average of Starbucks. That's why I saw Starbucks is going to get to the point where it's an average of that employee is going to make $17 an hour. And I looked in the comments stated, well, oh yeah, if Starbucks does that, then guess what? The cost of coffee is going to go up and everything like that. I don't think the cost of coffee is going to go up. I think what's going to happen is businesses will understand if they're going to pay somebody at $17 an hour, what I think the regular or ordinary average Joe needs to be doing is making sure that they are better suited at doing the job, because those people who make the coffee will become a better standard group of people. Because I believe what it does is what's going to make restaurants more responsible for who they hire and who they put in place. But I think if you keep it at $7, $8 an hour, then what you do is the concept of, I'm going to put 20 people in there, and guess who's going to not get it? Customer service is going to be horrible. Food is going to be horrible. Service is going to be horrible. Everything is going to be horrible. The food is going to be late. It's going to be cold and all the other stuff like that. But if you really look at it from a perspective of what Starbucks, and I appreciate Starbucks, I appreciate Starbucks doing for what they do, because when Starbucks goes out there and makes it where it's a medium of $17 an hour, it doesn't change the employee structure. And let's say it does raise up the price of coffee $1. It's not going to change the customer service. It's not going to change anything else, because eventually what's going to happen is, if Starbucks is paying an average wage of $17 an hour, McDonald's is paying an average wage of $11 an hour, where do you think you're going to go and apply for a job first? You're going to apply for a job at Starbucks. So the quality of employee and staff is going to migrate over here. The same conversation with I can't think of this, Costco's. Costco's put a sign out there saying average wage $16, $17 an hour. So what you saying, everything in their building is going to be higher at a higher cost? I don't think so. when you produce a higher rate of pay, you get a better employee. And I think that a lot of our organizations need to really strive and function on it. Now, I'm not talking about the mom and pop. I'm not talking. I'm not talking about mom and pop. I think mom and pop stores need to find a model that fits them and use that model to fixate that organization. I think that we need to make sure that what we're doing, we're following suit to what we got to forecast for in the future. You know, what I think is, I think you're going to, like I said before, you'll have a better quality work. Now, I want to tell those low wage employees that guess what? I don't believe that they need to get $17 an hour unless they're willing to step up their customer service. Let's get this straight, because I want to make sure the other side of me is spoken for too. I want it when you paying $17 an hour. I want to be able to walk into that establishment and I got better customer service. I want it when I ask for no mayonnaise, it ain't no mayonnaise on that sandwich. If I ask for extra ketchup, it's extra ketchup on that sandwich. So I'm going to demand that you're giving a higher rate of pay. You're giving me also a better quality of service. As a manager, that's going to be the first thing I'm going to stand on. If I say I don't want no sesame seeds on my bun, I don't want no sesame seeds on my bun. But this is the way we need to start working. Yes, they can afford it. And my thing is this. Profit margin, the problem with America is we've not tested the limits of profit margin. Profit margins have been skyrocketing out the roof. Now, I'm not talking about this COVID-19 period, because COVID-19 showed us a whole other arm of what we need to be working on. But what we need to be striving for is this. 3 things. First off, if you don't want big business to dominate, then we need mom and pop businesses down there. And so I don't want you thinking that I'm trying to create a narrative where you have to pay these people all this money and try to compete with big boss, because big boss ain't going to be the only winner. I think another thing is, as a society, we've gotten lazy as far as being creative. There are so many narratives that still need to be created in our community. There's so many narratives that we can be creating from. But I think that we've gotten lazy as a society, and we're not going out there and doing what we need to be doing to generate revenue. I think we've gotten codependent on all those things in our society, and we've not been doing what we need to do to change the narrative. I think these things are very, 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 very important. And y'all, I was just trying to make sure my computer is plugged up so it didn't go dead on y'all. I think these things are very, 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 very important. And what we should be striving for is exclusivity. Hold just a second. There you go. I didn't want to go dead on y'all. Exclusivity. I think what we need to be really striving for is making sure that we take care of our business. And our business at hand is too important. Our business at hand is too important. And so when it comes to these things right here, we created this podcast. It is what it is, because what we got to do is we got to break the normalcy. We got to break the functionality that we don't expect to be out there. We can no longer allow for information to come from one source without fact checking it to make sure that one source is actually a true viable source. We have to make sure that society, we're doing what is necessary to generate what we need to keep society flowing and growing. There's a lot of subjects that I really want to just push out there and have conversations on. And like I said, for the next couple of months, all I'm going to be doing is really doing a lot of talking, so I can establish this audience. So therefore, we can have a good show and a good program where we're getting content out there for people to be able to listen to, because we are at war. We are at war. We are at war. And the only way we're going to be able to defeat this war is we got to come to the table to make sure we have the content that's going to give us the right results, the right answer. And so the next point that I really want to get into was the narrative as far as, and I'm going to go back to my original narrative about local politics. I know I went left and I went right, but I'm going to go back to my narrative in reference to local government, where it comes to municipal government and county government. I really want to get back into those brain thought process ideas. And the other thing I want to do is I'm starting to see, which I'm more than happy that I'm seeing this, where more people are stepping up to the mantle to run for public office. I want to focus my last 10-15 minutes talking about how proud I am to see more people step up to the mantle and run for office. Not even everybody who is just stepping up to the mantle and running for office, because you know what? What we're doing is we're breaking barriers and we're challenging the system. And it's so important for us to do that. There are so many communities out there. So many communities out there in the state of Georgia that are being represented by people that don't look like who they represent. There are so many communities out there. And I applaud people for stepping up and stepping to the gate. And on November the 2nd, let me tell you something. If you don't win, doesn't mean you quit. It just means you wipe your pants off, you clean your boots up, and you get ready for the next race. And you take the time to figure out what you did wrong, to step forward to make sure what's wrong is turned out to be what's right. And so shots out. And I know I don't have to do this, but shots out to my good friend, Julius Hall, because he's one of those people I'm super, super, super proud of, because what he did was he got tired of seeing what was going on in his community. He got tired of seeing the problems going on in his community, and he stepped forward and ran for public office. And people like that, we need to see more of running out here for public office, because you know what? By him doing so, he challenged the system. And so he has a couple of things that they tried to come at him for. But guess what? Julius, and I'm not going to tell his story because we talked about his story in our very, very first show. But what he had to overcome, I am super, super proud. And I'm telling you right now, he's going to be an elected official in this county, whether people like it or not. And when he comes and changes stuff up and he goes and be Julius Hall like he liked to be Julius Hall, then when he changes those things, I'm going to be his biggest supporter. Now, he'll tell you, me and him don't agree on everything. But guess what? The one thing about me and that brother, we have our disagreements and our disagreements among ourselves, because it ain't y'all business to know how we disagree or if we disagree. And so shouts out to Julius Hall. Shouts out to my people down in Jessup. My good friend Tyrone Johnson. Tyrone Johnson's doing amazing things down there in Jessup. He challenged the system. He went to the former mayor and told the former mayor about the systemic racism that existed in Jessup. How Jessup had sat there for all these years and did absolutely, positively nothing for the minorities in that community. And guess what he did? He stepped forward, and not only did he step forward, he asked Stephanie Williams and another young lady to step forward so they can go over there and take over the whole government structure. And now, mind you, this is what power really looks like when you understand and you're not afraid to challenge the system. This is what it looks like. Shouts out to my other people out in Port Wentworth. Gabrielle Nelson, I'm proud of you for standing on your gates for what you feel that you need to be standing on. You tell me you want a heart for the city council, and guess what? Do what you have to do what you must to bring that heart to city council in Port Wentworth, because that's the only way we're going to fix systemic racism. The only way we're going to fix the problems that currently exist in our community, we're going to be able to challenge it by changing and challenging the narrative. That's what we have to do. Shouts out to my people down in Brunswick. My people in Brunswick doing the same thing. My people in Waycross doing the same thing. My people in Swainsboro doing the same thing. My people in Atlanta, East Point, College Park, everywhere where we having elections and black people are standing and stepping up to run for public office. It is time for us to make sure that we represent the community. Now watch this. Before y'all go out there and say, well, there you go James, he talking about black people this and black people that. I'm talking about black people this and black people that, because all those communities I called out have a majority narrative of African Americans who sit in those populations that have been left out, disenfranchised, or not enfranchised ever, as I should say. They've been left out of what's going on in the scope of the community. Shouts out to Garden City. I didn't forget you, Garden City. These communities have stepped forward to make sure that they bring change. And next week when we talk, maybe we need to bring some of them people onto the gate. Maybe we need to bring some people on the show to make sure that we change the narrative to move forward. Yes, it is on us. I'm going to tell you now, next year is going to be a phenomenal year. I'm going to have so much fun. And yes, y'all go out there and tell Julius. I need everybody who got Julius Hall number. And I need y'all to text my ATR, the ATR platform we stand on, the man who has put together the platform for us to be able to get our voice out there. Y'all tell him he always fuss about me calling people out. I'm going to start calling people out in 2022. And I know he probably smiling in the background, but I'm going to make sure I call some folk out because you know what? It's time to do so. Yes, ma'am, we cannot give up, Miss Jones. We cannot give up, Miss Jones. And shouts out to my friend Charlie Brown. His last name is not Wilson. It's Brown. So I want to make sure shouts out to Charlie Brown. I appreciate everybody taking the time to pay attention to what's going on, narrative speaking. In Julius Hall, you know good and well, I'm not going to call nobody names out, but I will be very sophisticated on how I get them out there as far as that's concerned. But it's very, very important that Hype Jones understands that what we got to do moving forward, we can no longer, I'm going to say this again, we can no longer in Savannah, Chatham County, 1st Congressional District, state of Georgia, the United States of America, we as African Americans can no longer move an inch forward without starting to call out a black agenda. If we're not willing to stand on a black agenda, if we're not willing to put together narratives to people who want to represent us, if we can no longer be afraid to ask these questions, we have to, and shouts out to Marilyn Jackson. Y'all know she probably ain't even on this thing right here, but Marilyn Jackson, shout out for always calling out the wrongs and not being afraid for anybody to see you call out the wrongs. We have to step up to this platform. We have to start challenging the system. We have to make sure America is just what it is supposed to be, not what it was designed for, because we were never a part of the design. Unfortunately, 300 years later, we're going to force our way to be in that narrative of the design. But we were not a part of the design. And so what we have to do is we got to kick in the door and wave in the 4-4. Just like Biggie said, we ain't trying to hear that mess no more. We have to step forward. We have to make sure it is what it is no longer the existing point. We are too smart, we are too proud, and we've done too much for this country to be secondary citizens anymore. We have to make sure that we're maneuvering spaces where we're changing the narrative to fit the diagram of what things fit for us. And so now I'm down to my last 10 minutes. I appreciate Betty Jones. I appreciate Charlie Brown, Orlando, Mike, Donnie, Chuck. I appreciate all y'all for standing in the gate to hear me rabble for about 48 minutes when this is not the rabble show, but you hear me rabble about these concepts. I promise you, and those people who know me know that I'm going to come up with some facts and figures over the next couple of months to make sure that when we get into election season come March, I ain't just running my mouth. I'm sharing the dialogue that we need to hear as a people and that was going to move our narrative forward, because it's time out for all the playing, and it's time to pull our bootstraps up and start calling it is what it is, not to be anymore, because we are the only people that can change the narrative to move us forward. Yes, I am. I'm trying my hardest to be as real as possible. And you know, it is thankless to acknowledge you, Julius, because the simple fact is, as much as we argue, my brother, I still love you and I still love your passion, because you know what? The fight is not between us. The fight is with those out there. And you know well as I know, they fight on their side too. The only difference is they do it the same way we do it. They fight within closed doors. So when they going out in the world, when it comes down to the fight, they fighting with each other to the world. And that's the way we need to be. That's the way we got to be. And that's the way we're supposed to be. And so, and yes, ma'am, I appreciate it. I'm trying to be as 100 as possible. But what I need y'all to do is, when I really crank this thing up, I need y'all to share. I'm tired of the news outlets not putting our message out there. It's time for us to stick together and start sticking it to them what news information needs to be brought forward. And so with that being said, right now, really and truly, the next 10 minutes, I'm filibustering because I done exhausted all my conversation. I done said everything I had to say. Unless y'all got some questions for me, I'm here. I'm here to answer any questions. But I do, once again, I appreciate everybody for stepping to the gate, being on this platform. I appreciate those people who are watching, taking the time to watch. This show will be re-aired several times. If you take the time, Keisha Gibson Carter's on this platform. She's an alderwoman at large right here in the great city of Savannah, Georgia. She, a lot of people get mad, and I spent 2-3 minutes on her. A lot of people get mad at how she comes and what she says. But if y'all really, really sit back and pull back all the layers and actually listen to what she's saying, there's some powerful words in there. And what she is just doing, she's just a new politician. She's just a new politician working her way into the system. Let me tell you something, though. But if you're willing to sit back and listen to the words she says, it's some powerful linguistics behind what she says. And I ask you, I beg you, stop holding her accountable for the words and listen to the message, and you will have a better understanding. And I guarantee it, she's getting better and better by the minute, and she's holding folk accountable. And that's what we need to be at. It's not picking sides. It's holding folk accountable where I'm at. And then Alicia is proud as she is and as proud as she can be. You know the thing about Alicia, I said it. Yeah, you heard it. The one thing I love about her is she is candid enough to make sure that conversations that have been held in the secret by African Americans over generations are no longer secret conversation, because we need to stop holding secrets from each other, and we need to start calling each other out. And if you're mad at that for that sister doing that, then y'all mad at your own self, because we got to stop this peacemaking conversation, because all they doing is bringing the energy that's in that private room, that private quarter, and putting it on the platform for all us to see. And so my thing is, stop being judgmental as far as what they say or what they do, and start listening to the message of what they do. Because I guarantee, if you start listening to what Alicia's saying and what Keisha's saying, you'll hear some powerful message. And one of the most beautiful women in the world, as far as when it comes to brains is concerned, when it comes to putting policy out there and understanding the mechanisms of policy, Benetta Lanier. I adore Miss Benetta Lanier because she knows how to break that thing down completely. And I think all she cares about is that community. I think she cares about that community more than she cares about herself sometimes. Y'all don't tell her I said that, but I think that these are the kind of people that we need to have. Time out for those established people, y'all. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the established game, because with established people, you get the same old established bull crap that we've been getting forever. If you want change, we need to bring change. You're not going to get change staying with the same stale stuff that you already have. And so I know I've lost a lot of friends by giving acknowledgement to those 3 women. But you know what? In the end, I'm going to sleep good tonight, because you know what? I'm only speaking the truth because I'm a native of this community. And I know them women before they were alder women or before they were elected official women. And I know all 3 of them had a passion for community before they got in those positions. I know that for a reason. I saw them call out community for what it is and for what it is to be. And shouts out to my good brother. I know he's under health, brother Pastor Leonard Smalls. Shouts out to Leonard Smalls. Hey, my brother, you always been a good mentor to me, making sure that I stay on the right foot of things and everything like that. And making sure that we keep our feet to the ground. Shouts out to Dr. Patricia Harris, Pat Harris, Dr. Harris. She is a trailblazer. She put together the 5th District Coalition, making sure the 5th District is starting to stand up and listen to the concerns of the 5th District. Shouts out to Pat Harris. She making sure that we got voter registration going on, making sure that we got the voter empowerment going on, making sure various communities out there are doing what's right for that piece right there. Shouts out to all those people who've come before us, who've laid the groundwork, may have not always done right by us, but still laid the groundwork, because I still got to adore you for what it is. But what you're not going to hear me say is I'm not going to talk about any bad this year in 2021. Maybe in 2022 you get me to talk about people bad. But this year I'm going to keep it culture, keep it clean, and keep it 100. I just want to make sure that we speak in positivity in 2021. Well, in 2020, you might want to keep an eye on me, because that's going to be the year I'm going to not call out people. Because Julius will tell you first, I don't call out people. Because when we talk about the person, we lose value of the position, because the position is very valuable. As far as the position, it's not the person, it's the position we need to be coming for. So if we come and target the position and that person doesn't fulfill that position, then that means we need to replace that person, not the position, because the position stays standard forever, but the person can't be replaced. And see, that's what we need to start logic with. We need to start looking at that person in that position and saying, if that person is not upholding that position, then we need to replace that person. And so that's what I challenge us to take these last 4 minutes, what I just said. I just gave y'all 3 women who I adore as far as putting out policy, who are trying to change the narrative in the city government of Savannah. I ain't knocking anybody else on city council. I'm just saying that when I look at the city council meeting, those are the 3 people who equal into my narrative as far as Jay Jones policy is concerned. I didn't say no hats. I said Jay Jones, because I am a human. I am a person. I can vote and I have influence just like everybody else. And yes, you right. You call them out. I'll call them out next year. You plan on running for office in the future? I'm debating on that. Good question. I'm gonna let Julius put his thing out there. All right. Can I get my other person back now? Mr. Moderator. So yes, I do have plans to run for office, but my thing right now is what I really want to focus on is not my personal agenda as far as running for office. What I really want to focus on is family, number one, and I want to focus on getting other people in my game plan in position. Because by me getting people in position, people who want to step up, people who have been afraid to run for office because they didn't have the resume, people who have been afraid to run for office because they were ashamed, people who are afraid to run for office because they may think that they can't win. Though that's what my main concentration is to be for the next couple of years, to make sure that I find people who are not afraid, who are not people who have resumes, who are not people. I want to find people who are ready to run for public office so I can help build the narrative for them to run for public office. And that's my goal for the next 2 or 3 years, is to identify people to run for city council, to run for state elected seats, to run for county commission, to run for Congress. My goal is to identify new, young, and I say young not in age, but young in spirit, young in truth, and young in narrative, to take on the mantle to run for public office. And so to answer your question, at this time, I'm not planning on doing it. However, a part of my strategy is if someone doesn't run for certain seats in 2022, I will put my name in the hat to run for office, because everything with me is about strategy. And so, yes, to answer your question, it is on the forefront. But right now, I really want to focus on those people, other people, young people, futuristic people getting in those public office, those spaces. Are there any questions? Because we're right at the 1 minute mark, and I want to make sure I thank Julius Hall for calling people out, for doing everything he do. Shouts out for Julius Hall for making sure we had this ATR platform. Shouts out to everybody who took the time to hear me run from my mouth for the last 59 minutes and the next 56 seconds. Shouts out to everybody out there who took the time to be here with us. And shouts out to everybody who's ready to change the narrative. I want to go ahead and put a plug out there. November the 16th, we got to Stop the Violence rally. November the 16th, Stop the Violence rally. Stay tuned, because you know what? That's right around the corner. And Charlie Brown, I can't talk about it today because I'm down to my last 26 seconds. But I think the housing market in Savannah sucks. That's the quickest response I can probably give you, brother. I want to make sure, shouts out to everybody platform-wise. I hope I didn't miss you. See you at 10:30. My big brother, Mr. Producer. Lights out. Touchdown. See y'all next week, Friday.